number?
It is on 636. Parsha Achrei. It's funny, we all call it Achrei, but or Achrei Mot, but if you look in the old Chumashim, like it has in the Art Scroll, Achrei. So that's why actually when they put it together, the two parshas, Achrei Mot-Kedoshim, there's a story. I don't remember where it was. There was a shul in Europe, and they came after the war, and the whole community was decimated, and they still had up from before the war what parsha they were reading, and they came, and what was written on the board was Achrei Mot-Kedoshim, after the holy ones passed away. Because Achrei Mot means because like this week it's all one. We read to both of them. So when you look at it in writing, it's Achrei Mot-Kedoshim, after the holy ones passed away.
They took it as a title of one parasha.
Yeah.
And it's usually come in this time of the year after Yom HaShoah, Yom Zikaron, Yom Ha'atzmaut.
Yeah. So on a funny note, they say, I mean, it's funny, Achrei Mot-Kedoshim also means those words, Achrei Mot-Kedoshim. After a person passes away, they become holy. Sometimes you know someone and they're not so great, and then they pass away, and you go to the funeral, they talk about what a great person he was, and everybody says what an amazing person. Like, he wasn't that amazing. But guess what? Achrei Mot-Kedoshim. After a person passes away, everybody says, oh, he was holy. Anyway, so yeah, Achrei Mot is called Achrei Mot because it starts off. We're not going to read the Psukim because I really want to get to Kedoshim as well. But Achrei Mot starts off. Inside of Achrei Mot-Kedoshim there's the reading of Yom Kippur. Like, it's a very fundamental parasha. So Achrei Mot starts off with after the two sons of Aaron, they brought in last week's parasha. They brought the Keteris, they brought the incense inside the Beis Hamikdash. They shouldn't have. They weren't told to. They weren't commanded to. A fire came down from heaven and consumed them. The neshama, they passed away. So that's what we start off. Afterwards, B'kar Basam, they came close to Hashem Vayamusu, and they died. And as a result, Hashem said, like after every tragedy, there's an inquiry and then there's new rules. Like a plane crashes. Okay, now we're going to put new rules. You have to stay at least 500 feet from helicopters, whatever. It's the same. Hashem said to Moshe, come to me and let me tell you the rules. You're not allowed to go into the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh HaKadoshim, which is beyond the Pareches, inside the Mishkan and also the Beis HaMikdash. You're not allowed to go there anytime. The Kohen Gadol only went there one time a year, one day a year. He went a few times, but he went one day a year, which was Yom Kippur. Now, they say it's interesting, just, how would they, a room which is you only go in one time a year will become very dusty and everything. So they were allowed to, the Kohanim were allowed to go in to clean it. How would they go? They weren't allowed to go in, as it says, mibeis la'pareches, inside the curtain. So they were lowered down. The Mishnah in Tamid, in Maseches Tamid, tells us that they were lowered down on a pulley system, and they would clean everything and go back up. So people were allowed in for maintenance, but the Kohen Gadol the high priest was only allowed to go in one time a year. And that's why it starts off talking about Yom Kippur. Bazois in the Pasuk Gimel 3, with this, he's allowed to go in. There's very specific rules. After the two sons went in, and they offered up the incense, and they were considered to have gone too close to Hashem, or whatever it was that their sin was, like 7 different opinions in the Rishonim. But they made this mistake, and Hashem says, this is the rules. You're not allowed to go in there for no reason inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim. We're not going to go into detail, but if you read page 636 and 38, it begins detailing that day when he's going to go in, which is the holiest day of the year, Yom Kippur, Shabbos, Shabbosan. That's the day, and it goes into exactly what the Kohen Gadol should do. All the korbanos, all the sacrifices. It talks about the 2 goats, the goel echad laHashem, the goel echad laAzazel. They would make a lot to decide which one is which. And the one which is offered up, which for Hashem was offered up, the one which was laAzazel would be taken on a long walk with a pious person, and it would be taken and thrown off. And that would be off a cliff, and that would be an atonement for the whole nation's suffering. And they would know that it was thrown off when there was a red piece of wool in the Beis HaMikdash. When that turned white, they knew, God has forgiven us. So that was a very, very specific thing that had to, system that had to happen. Now, it's important to know that in Jewish history, they did this many, many times, hundreds and hundreds of times. In fact, they had the first Beis HaMikdash for around just less than 400 years, and the second Beis Hamikdash for 420 years. And if you add that both together, you end up with almost 800 years, even without the Mishkan, that they did this every Yom Kippur. But not every year was the Kohen Gadol super righteous. In fact, the Mishnah tells us that sometimes they would have to vet who would be the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, and make sure that he was really righteous, and test him and quiz him. And sometimes, if they weren't righteous, when they went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Holy of Holies, they would die, because it was so holy. We don't have anything like this nowadays, but it was so holy that they would. Now, what would happen? They would. The Mishnah says they would tie a string.
Yeah.
The Mishnah was written just after the time of the late in the time of the second Beis Hamikdash. They would tie a string to their waist, and they would schlep him out. And it says in the pasuk here, where is it? The ish. No person is allowed to be in the whole oil moed. They had to be out of the whole premises, essentially, whilst he went in. So they had a really long string, and they'd have to pull him out if he didn't come out after a bit. So it was a very dangerous endeavor. And then you see later on, it talks about how they would send the goat on page 642, pasuk 21. And it says they take this he-goat and they send it with a designated person. Now, this person, I think, also interestingly, the Gemara says, he would die every year, I think. So they would send it with a very old person. I think so, if I'm remembering correctly. And he would be appointed. This was his job. Anyway, so let's just continue again. This is all the work that happened. We actually summarize this on Yom Kippur in Musaf. We summarize it's called the Seder HaAvodah, the order of the work. Because it's not just irrelevant. First of all, it's going to come back. In the third Beis Hamikdash, we had a whole class over Yom Tov. You were away, but you guys heard it. We had a whole class over Yom Tov about, will there be korbanot in the third Beis Hamikdash? Because some people say, the Rambam says the only reason that we have sacrifices is because there was idol worship in those days. So 3,500 years ago, when the Jewish nation became a nation, it was very hard. Everybody else has animals and idols and stones and the sun. So God gave them sort of a physical form to be able to offer up, because that's what they were doing to their idols. So some people say, based on that, they don't need to come back. And others also quote, I think it's Rav Kook, the end of Shemona Esrei, we take 3 steps back and we say, bring the Beis Hamikdash back. In his commentary in Hebrew, he writes, there will come a time when there's going to be flour offerings, bread offerings, only bread offerings, no animal offerings. So they say, he also says. So the class we gave was basically analyzing the Rambam and Rav Kook, who are supposedly the two opinions say it's not going to come back. Because nowadays it's very hard for us to understand animal offerings, because nobody does it. The Gemara said, I think it's the Gemara in Pesachim says that the day before Passover, every family in the nation had to bring a Karban Pesach, Paschal lamb. And that meant that by the end of the day, says the Gemara, there was up to their knees in blood. Makes sense. 100,000 animals, at least, and everybody comes in one day, and we think about that, and it's very, I would faint. Like, I don't do well with blood, you know what I mean? So it's very hard for us to imagine these things. So that's why we had the class looking into, is it true that even though the Torah discusses the offerings in the first Beis Hamikdash and the second Beis Hamikdash and the Mishkan before that and the Tabernacle, will they come back in the third Beis Hamikdash? So without going into the whole class and everything, but the answer is that even though we don't understand them, even Maimonides, the Rambam says they're going to come back. How do we know this? So first of all, the Rambam wrote a set of 14 books, Yad HaChazaka it's called, and it's all practical halacha. In it, the Rambam writes all the things that are practical or will become practical. So he writes about Mashiach, he writes about judges, he writes about courts, he writes about everything. And he writes about the temple service, including all the karbanas, right? Because he wasn't writing abstract, he was writing only practical, only things which are, because he believed that when Mashiach comes, it's going to come again. And we quoted many different times that the Rambam says, Maimonides says the same thing, that he doesn't say the sacrifice is not going to come back. He just says the reason why they were initiated, one of the reasons, was because that's what the other nations were doing. So Hashem knew that this is what we could relate to, but that's not the only reason. And it's also, he doesn't say it's not going to come back. And even Rav Kook, what he was referring to was there's a prophecy, I think it's the end of Micha, it talks about there will come a time where, this is what the prophet says in the Nach, where the animals are going to gain intelligence like humans. Now I'm thinking about it. Now I'm thinking maybe humans will lose intelligence to be like animals. But anyway, the prophet says there's going to be a time. It's not the time of Mashiach. There's going to be a time. Doesn't matter when. 10,000 million years. Doesn't matter when. There's going to be a time when animals are going to be as intelligent as humans. So that's what Rav Kook was talking about. If animals are as intelligent as us, we can't bring them up as offerings. If they're talking and, So Rav Kook was basically, and he writes very clearly in another place that he believes there will be offerings in the third Beis HaMikdash, just at the time, eventually, when animals gain intelligence, same as humans, then obviously we're not going to offer them up. So they're going to be voting, you know what I mean? So therefore, we're only going to offer grain offerings. And that's a time after the third Beis HaMikdash. That's like a different time. Anyway, we had a whole class on it. So if you're interested, I can send you the source material. But the point is, however hard it is to understand, there's a reason why it's in the Torah. There's a reason why every Yom Kippur we read it. And why do we read it? Because the pasuk says, right? When we speak about things, if it's things that we can't do, it's as if we did it. That's why in the morning in the Siddur it has karbanas, because we can't offer up sacrifices, but we can speak. And there are actually some opinions that when Mashiach comes, we're going to have to bring makeup offerings for all the ones that we missed. Can you imagine?
You have to be very rich.
כשהייתי שואל תלמידים שלי לבר מצווה, שהייתי צריך ללמד אותם פרשה כזו עם הזבחים, הייתי שואל אותו, למה אתה חושב שהיום אין קורבנות? אז התשובה הטיפוסית הייתה, אגודת צער בעלי חיים הייתה תובעת את בית הכנסת.
Right. So you should know that's another discussion, that shechita, slaughtering, it doesn't hurt. It really doesn't hurt.
Okay.
How do I know? First of all, if you learn the halachas of shechita, we've spoken about this before, but if you learn the halachas, it's the knife has to be 100% smooth, has to be done in one motion. It immediately kills the nerve endings that connect the brain to the body, so there's no feeling. Not only that, the knife is so thin that it feels like a paper cut. And I know this from shechtim, shechet. Sometimes they test the knives, and sometimes if they're not careful, they can cut themselves. And I've spoken to a shechet who cut himself. He says for 5 seconds you don't feel it. It's like a paper cut. You ever got a paper cut? You don't feel it, and only later you feel it. Well, guess what? The shechita takes less than a third of a second sometimes, and the animal has not felt it by the time that it's completely cut the windpipe and the esophagus, and the nerve endings are gone. And that's why it's very specific how we slaughter. No pressure is allowed. So there is no question that shechita is painless.
Yeah.
And for those who understand how it's done and has spoken to it. But I'm just saying, so it's not tzar b'lechaim. Now, you know where there is tzar b'lechaim? If they hold the animals and they pressurize, which you're not allowed to do. That's a different story. I'm not saying that in butchers there's not pain of animals. Unfortunately, there is. But the shechita in itself and the way it was done in the Beis HaMikdash was not, God forbid, to cause pain to the animal. Anyway, so that's the whole beginning of Achrei. It's talking about the order of the order. Now, randomly, if you turn to page 646, randomly in pasuk Yud, in the 10th pasuk, it puts in a line that you're not allowed to drink blood. Pasuk Yud in page 646, 10. If there's a man from the Jewish people, or from the convert who sojourns with the Jewish people, and they eat any blood. By the way, that's talking about not a ger tzedek, it's talking about a ger toshav. In the olden days, they had a certain type of convert that would keep the 7 laws of Noach and would live in the Jewish nation. They were accepted to a small degree. So anyway, they're not allowed to eat blood. No, you're not allowed to eat blood. And if you eat blood, you get cut off. And it goes on and on and on to talk about blood. The Gemara says a beautiful thing about this. The Gemara, because it's not just this prohibition, I think it's mentioned 3 different times, if not more, in the Torah. Don't drink blood. Now, who wants to drink blood? Nobody. Till today, there's some crazy Michigan. There's always going to be crazy people. But nobody wants to eat blood. Nowadays people eat the eyeball and the liver and the kidney and I don't even want to mention which other parts of the animal. But nobody drinks blood that I know of. It's not accepted. And still, the Torah says, don't drink blood. Now, it's not like in the olden days you used to drink blood. So the Gemara says a beautiful thing. This is a Gemara that we just had recently in Daf Yomi, at the end of Makkas. It says, if already the reward and the severity of not drinking blood is so important in the Torah, and nobody even wants to drink blood. Can you imagine things that we really want to do? Want to, eat something. I want to eat some shellfish, whatever, and I stop myself. Can you imagine how much reward I'm going to get? because the Torah is giving so much reward and so much importance to something that I don't want to do anyways. So I'm going to get to heaven, I'm going to get a bucket of reward because I didn't drink blood. I didn't even want to drink blood. Can you imagine for those things that I wanted to do and I controlled myself? Hashem's going to say, wow, you got so much reward. So the Gemara actually deduces from this. But yeah, it's randomly as it's discussing the Karbanas, it talks about the prohibition against eating blood and the commandment after we shecht an animal to do kisrei hadam, to cover the blood. I one time in my life had the merit to do this mitzvah. This was in Israel when we did kaparas. So, before kaparot, before Yom Kippur, you take a chicken, and in Israel they still do with a chicken. In New York they do, some places do with a chicken. And
in
afterwards,
Miami we saw also.
Miami did a chicken?
Yeah.
You saw that?
Yeah, I saw like the cages.
Yeah. So they did it, and in Israel they do the shecht on the street so that you can do the mitzvah of kisrei hadam. Kisrei hadam, you cover the blood. It's very important. One of the idea is that life is represented in blood. There's no blood without life.
Nefesh,
nefesh adam, very good. And we recognize that even though we shechted this animal in a painless way for the benefit of humans, so we can eat it, but still we cover the life. We respect the life, even of an animal. Therefore, there's an obligation to do kisrei hadam, to take some sand and cover the blood to show that we never spill blood, even when it's for good reason, for food or that, without carelessly. We always take a moment to do kisrei hadam. So anyway,
Rabbi, I think
it's one of the reasons.
You think about alilot dam that were against the Jewish people that they use for Pesach. The dam. It's so against the Torah, and look how they did it. It's sometimes it drives you crazy.
I kid you not. You talk about blood libels. Even just 2 years ago, when they found tunnels in Chabad in New York. Remember, it made the news. Yeah. And all the conspiracy theorists online, they found always a conspiracy theory, the yellow Coca-Cola, you name it. There's always. So they said in the tunnels they had blood. How did they know? Because when they took out the books, the Sfarim, see here it's got gold. Some Sfarim, they have like red, make nice colors around the outside. So they said, look, the Jews have, their books have blood on it. It's unbelievable. And all you need to do is open up the Torah, and you see, it says very clearly, don't eat blood.
Black and white.
So to accuse us of putting blood in matzah, again, that's anti-Semitism. It's completely illogical. So it goes on to talk about that. It goes on to talk about the prohibition to eat in the end of the 17th chapter, page 648, verse 15. You're not allowed to eat a nevela, a treifa, and if one does, they become tamei, etc., etc.
Wait, I have a question. It says a couple of times, "Rachatz b'mayim," like it's the mikveh. Going to the mikveh? Yes.
Yeah, it's an interesting way of writing it. Yeah. So if you look at the Targum Onkelos, which is translated into Aramaic, he was actually a convert. He converted, and he translated the whole Torah to Aramaic, the time of the Greeks. So he translates it to v'yisrei, which is Aramaic for cover. So instead of rinsing with water, which is like a shower, Barachatz means to cover oneself in water, which is a mikvah.
Yeah.
So it's just a point of reference. But you're right. Yeah. Every time it says Barachatz b'mayim, it's not a shower. They didn't have showers in those days, so they could pour buckets of water over their head. But
this is not.
It's not. Yeah. How do we know? I don't know how we know. You ask you why doesn't it say v'taval b'mayim, v'taval b'mayim, right? It's a good question. I'm not actually sure what the specific reference of Varachatz b'mayim, because also Varachatz sounds like you're doing it for clean. He's not dirty. He's tamei. He's not dirty. So he doesn't have to use soap. You know what I mean? So,
ritually.
Yeah. So he should say v'taval. We call it today the bracha when we go to mikveh is ala tvila. The tvila when we dip vessels. We don't say lerchotz kelim. We say al tvilat kelim.
Right.
So it's very interesting, actually. And I'm sure there's definitely something. I don't know offhand.
Because I saw it here, and I saw again, Barachatz b'mayim, it didn't say the word tamei. So I thought maybe it was a mikveh purified. So maybe that's why we see the connection.
Maybe that's how we have to think of it. But almost every time Even we spoke about the end of Parshas Mitzvah, in the 15th chapter, spoke about a zav, somebody has a discharge. We don't have this nowadays. And it says again, varachatz, varachatz, varachatz.
It's very interesting. And
varachatz b'mayim, over and over again, varachatz b'mayim. That's the terminology. I'm not familiar with v'taval b'mayim. I know it does mention the word v'taval some places. Anyway, okay.
Because when you wash yourself, so you're clean. Taval, you could just be in the water, but I mean the water, the mikveh, like makes you pure. Yeah. Okay, so I think maybe that's why it's rachatz and not taval.
Maybe, yeah, because you're washing your soul, washing your soul.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean they translate it here to immerse. They changed, Okay.
Immerse
so
is completely all the body.
All body, yeah.
Yes.
If you don't go in properly, then it doesn't count.
Yeah.
It's very important. There's no chatzitza, but anyway, it doesn't really apply nowadays. I mean, we spoke in the last week's parsha about nida, but these type of tumas don't apply. Even if a person, God forbid, ate nevela, nowadays they don't go to mikveh because we're not. The Mishnah in Maseches, I think it's Alos, talks in detail about all the different levels of tuma, and there's one who touches the dead body. And then there's Rishon, first level, second level, third level, fourth level. So this level of tuma here is third or fourth level, which nowadays we all are. We all come in contact with dead bodies, unfortunately. Yeah, we wash our hands, but we're still tummy. Yeah. When the Beis HaMikdash comes, we're not going to be able to eat. If we're a kohen, we can't eat truma until we properly purify, and if we're regular people, we can't eat sacrifices, even the ones that we're allowed to eat. So when Mashiach comes, we're all going to have to go through a very serious purification process anyway when the Beis HaMikdash is back. Okay, the next chapter Chai, chapter Yud Ches, is the one we read on in Mincha on Yom Kippur, and it's very interesting because it's always a shock. You think like, what are you going to read about in Mincha and Yom Kippur? You're fasting, you're feeling really elevated, feeling really spiritual, and what do we read? And it's blunt, no immorality, forbidden relationships between a brother and a sister, and this is chapter 18 on page 648. It starts, and it starts off. Why are we not allowed to do these things? Now, obviously, many of these things we understand nowadays to be immoral anyway. But what you have to know is that this immorality that's in our brain, we know, a brother and a sister can't get married. It comes from the Torah, and this is why a lot of rabbis nowadays are putting emphasis on actually. I mean, I would say working with Christians, but not like working with Christians, but working to uphold what people call nowadays Judeo-Christian values. Because many of the things that we assume that are going to stay considered immoral forever, like, even immoral relationships between a person and a brother and sister, whatever, they're not necessary. If you think about it very deeply, then they are what we call, they are preconceived notions, but they are established in the Torah. They're only normal because the Torah codified it, and then it was accepted as a result later, 1,000 years later, by Christianity and by Muslim who copied the Torah. But they're not inherently, therefore, once as atheism grows and Torah values and Judeo-Christian values disappear, what people have to realize, this is what rabbis are talking about a lot now, is there's no bottom to this barrel. It will go and go and go and go, and we will end up, and the same as we have Nobel Prize laureates nowadays calling for people over the age of 80 to be, euthanized, basically killed, because they're no use to society. People get shocked by that. What you have to realize is that is going to increase and increase as Judeo-Christian values continue to disappear, because all our values are rooted in the Torah. Once you take away God, everything falls apart. Like, oh no, don't worry, bestiality is never going to be normal. Yeah, that's what you think now. But God forbid, if and that's why the Torah begins this statement and saying, do not do these things because they are connected to idol worship, they're connected to immorality, they're connected to the people of Egypt. Egypt was a disgustingly immoral place back then. They're connected to the people of the land of Canaan. And Hashem knew that the Jewish nation is going to be influenced by its surroundings. Like that's our purpose in the world, to fight the surroundings and not be influenced. And this is why, out of all the things we could read in Kippur afternoon, we go back to the basics. And we go back to these heinous crimes, which sound like crazy. A person and his mother, a person and a married woman, a person and his sister, a person and a granddaughter, a person and an aunt. And we go back to the basics and say, wow, the morality has to come from the Torah. Because if it doesn't, it can crumble. So it's a very profound and it's very stark. And I like looking around Yom Kippur afternoon as we read this, and everybody's tired and they're trying to be, super righteous, tzaddik looking and say like, why are we reading this now? I wanted to read something about the Holy of Holies, something about, and we really go back to the basics. So that is, it talks about idol worship, talks about forbidden relationships. It talks about, as we mentioned, many of these very, very immoral acts. And the Torah begins and ends this portion, which is chapter 18, with the same line. You're not allowed to do these disgusting things. They're called to'eva. To'eva is an abomination. And anybody who does these things, they are cut off. That means they're cut off from the next world. Either that or, God forbid, they pass away before the age of 60 in this world. And it's repeated over and over and over again. Ani Hashem Elokecha, I am Hashem your God. Your morals, your values have to come from the Torah, because if they don't, there's no end. And this is why, we often talk about as rabbis, like we don't like talking about the news in our drashas, in our speeches, because your news you get from the newspaper, but your morals you have to get from the Torah. Because if you get your morals from the newspaper, if you get your morals from the TV, if you get your values from somewhere outside of the Torah, however noble you think it is, it's a terrible thing. And that's why, again, like they may temporarily align with the Torah. That's what the illusion is. Oh, well, guess what? This and this person I follow has values that some of them align with the Torah. Guess what? Right now they do. The Germans were a very, very polite nation before Second World War. They were super gentle, super polite. No one would have imagined in 1935 what would happen, starting in 1938, finishing 1945. No one imagined it. They were the most polite people. But guess what? They turned into the biggest, disgusting animals humanity's ever seen. And things that we can't even describe. They're so bad. How did that happen? Well, guess what? Their morals were temporarily, they looked very fine. They looked to be the best people. There was a whole debate pre-war among the yeshiva world. Can we learn our manners and our morals from the Germans? The Germans they're so neat. They dress gepitzt, which is Yiddish for put together. They're so polite. They always say please and thank you. Can we learn our values from the Germans? And some people said, yeah, you should learn from the non-Jews. Look at them. They're so great. And some people said, no, we should get our values from the Torah. Let's learn Pirkei Avos, ethics of our fathers. Let's learn from our tradition, from our parents, from the book. And it was a tough debate until the war broke out. And then they realized that all their politeness and all their ethics and all their values and all their organization went into killing the Jews. Every single trait they had just shifted, just like that. So I know people, by the way, till today, they can't go to Germany. They walk in. I was with an old person. We were driving around Europe. We went into Germany. He heard German people talking. He wasn't in the war. His parents were in the war. And he saw them being all organized. He in his eyes, he saw a German guarding Auschwitz. That's what he saw. Because because till today, if you go there, you can feel it. And they're not the same people. We don't hold it against the current generation, but it's the very same values and morals and ideals, and that this opposites Western civilization had was immediately just turned against the Jews. So that's why the Torah talks about over and over again. We look inside the Torah for direction to see what's okay and what's not okay. And it's fundamental. It's fundamental to what we believe in. Okay, this week's Parsha, Kedoshim, we'll do just a couple lines of it, then we have to go. Continues with this theme in Perek Yud Tes, in 19th chapter, page 656, continues with this theme of be holy, Kedoshim to you. There's a big debate. This line in the second verse, second pasuk. What does it mean, be holy? Some opinions say be holy just means keep the rest of the Torah. Like, be holy, do 613 mitzvahs. Some opinions say no. Be holy means to go above and beyond. That means, we can follow all the rules of the Torah. This is the opinion of the Rambam, Nachmanides. He says, you can follow all the rules of the Torah and still be a disgusting person. He gives examples. You can eat meat and wine all day, be super unhealthy. I mean, I guess unhealthy also breaks the Torah because the Torah says we have to be healthy. But you could do disgusting things. You can dress disgusting. You can be, I guess you can't be mean to people, but you can look disgusting in many ways and say, oh, I'm not breaking the Torah. I didn't do this sin or that sin. So Kedoshim to you, according to Ramban, is basically telling you, even those things which it doesn't explicitly say in the Torah, we need you to be better. We need you to be Kedoshim, to be holy. But some say no. Rashi, for example, and I think the Rambam and the Chinuch, they say no. Kedoshim Teyu doesn't mean any extra things. It doesn't mean not to be what the Ramban is talking about, which is a naval b'shut haTorah, which is a disgusting person with the permission of the Torah. I'm going to eat steak for breakfast, dinner, supper because the Torah didn't say I'm not allowed to. It's a nice thing to do. It's not a nice thing to do. You can eat once a day. I don't know. I don't make the rules, but so there's a big debate what it means. But the idea is to be Kedoshim Teyu. And then we have the Pasuk Gimel, very, very profound, 3 fundamentals, which all appear on the first side of the Luchos, on the first 5 commandments. Ish imay va'aviv tirah, one must fear their father and mother. Not honor, fear. There's 2 things you have to honor and fear. The second thing is to keep Shabbos, to guard the Shabbos, and the third thing is I am Hashem. Now, I am Hashem is not really a mitzvah in this context, but they're all connected.
It's very interesting, Rabbi. If you think about the right side of the commandment, it starts with I am your God, and then it says about the Shabbat, and then it says the parents, and here the parents is the first.
So yeah. You know what they say? How do you learn how to fear God? We can't see God, we can't fear God. But if you fear and respect your parents, that is a line, a connection,
exactly,
right?
Exactly.
Because and there's many different, we don't have time for it now, but there's many different connections. Your parents give life. My parents gave me life. Your parents gave you life. God gave us life.
And it really makes sense because at the beginning, when the 10 commandments were given, so the Jewish people, they didn't know yet, okay? They needed to learn who is God, to be connected to God. And now God can afford to tell them what Yirat Hashem starts with, exactly.
Very good, yeah. That's how we can connect it. I have a rabbi I used to ask questions to in Israel, very, very holy, Kabbalistic and everything. And his big thing, every rabbi has that thing. His big thing, he spoke about on and on, was honoring father and mother is a key to everything. You have a better life if you honor father and mother. You have fear of God if you honor father and mother. Not only that, when the 2 parents are having problems, he would speak to the children and help them sort out the problems between the parents. And he was like, everything is between children and parents. If you understand that connection, you have everything. If you don't, you have nothing. And it was based on this because our sages tell us there's 3 partners to every person. Every person, 3 partners, right? Father, mother, and Hashem, right? And so naturally, if I know my father, I know my mother, but I don't know Hashem. So if I respect my father, respect my mother, if I fear my father and mother, then I can fear Hashem. Mm-hmm. So it's a fun. That's why it's on that side of the luchos. And there's a lot more to it, but it's very, very profound. And again, this is one of the many, many values that nowadays people don't understand. People don't understand. They don't understand okay, I don't fear. I had a fight with my parents and now I don't talk to them. Is it that bad? Yes, it is that bad. Because it's a representation of, God forbid, a bad connection with Hashem. It's a bad connection with my heritage, bad with all my generations in front of me. Besides the fact that this word of fear, who fears their father and mother nowadays? Opposite. The father and mother fear the teenagers. Whoa, that teenager. You know how many parents I spoke to? They ask for help with their teenagers. Let's say the teenagers on the smartphone for, literally 18 hours a day when there's no school. And they can't say a word. They can't say a word to their own child. And 200 years ago, exact opposite. A child like in awe, not trauma, in awe of a parent. And this is, people say, oh, it's just a parent, just a relationship. Okay, we lost that one. No, it's a representation of everything. It's a representation of our respect to our elders, of our respect for values, for Torah, and for Hashem. It's not just. And again, it's another example of how quickly in the last couple of years things have taken a real turn for the worse.
And also, we really see here that it's not kabedet avicha ve'timecha, as you said, not just to respect, but this is connected to God. Yeah. Okay, you respect them, you respect God. Those 3 things are connected to God. Yeah. The 3 things are here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why it uses the word fear, not honor. Yes. We don't really honor God, right? Give God a coffee, but fear is what we should have of God.
Like Yirah.
Yeah. Okay, we'll do a couple more lines. If you turn on to page 658, once we started talking about all the halachas, the laws of morality, we continue to talk about some of those laws. So if you look in the middle of the page in Pasuk Tes, how when you have a field, you have to leave the corner of your field for the poor people. I want you to imagine such a law nowadays. Imagine in America, the president says, everybody that has, you know, I don't know, some income has to give 10% to the poor. Can you imagine what people would say? And not only that, that's not the only rule. And anything that falls down, you have to give. And you can't take the small grapes. And you can't take. This is what people don't understand. People think like you know, the Torah is right wing or left wing. First of all, Torah is not any wing. The Torah is the root of everything. But socially, the Torah is more to the left. I mean, socially, not socially. Economically, Torah is more to the left. Heavy taxes. I wouldn't say heavy, but severe. Like, you got to take care of the poor. Not like it's capitalist and therefore who cares about the poor person? Get a job, you know? No, we have to provide for the poor, and therefore, literally, my field. I worked hard for my field. I have to leave the corner. I just have to put a sign up and say, "Poor people, come and take the pe'ah," which means the corner of my field, and this time, this day. If I'm harvesting my field, this is the halach of leket. If I'm harvesting my field, sorry, this is shikha, and I'm carrying them, and I leave something behind, I'm not allowed to go back and get it. I have to leave it for the poor. If some kernels fall out, I have to leave it for the poor. Small grapes, I have to leave for the poor. This is all leket, shikha, peah. These are all the rules that we look after the poor. And again, it would not fly nowadays. Nowadays, okay, I guess we give tax to the government gives Medicaid, so we do have a little bit of it. But the Torah is more, I would say, to the left of the economic normal now in capitalistic societies, but more to the right on many most moral and social values. So yeah, it's not that clear cut. But either way, then it goes on to talk about no stealing, no denying. And what I always find interesting about this is it puts the same level of severity, somebody who doesn't leave the corner of the field and somebody who steals. Right? Think about that. You could say, it's like saying that somebody that doesn't pay their tax is going to get as much punishment as somebody that steals. That's not the situation. Legally, if I don't pay my taxes, I will never go to jail. That's the rule. They will come take my house, they'll take my thing. If I don't have anything, they won't take anything. But if you don't pay your taxes, because they understand it's my money, but I'm giving it to Uncle Sam. You know, I'm sharing it with the US. Stealing, on the other hand, if I steal, I'm in jail right away. The Torah doesn't look at it like that. Now, the Torah doesn't have a jail system. The Torah has a much better judicial system that we don't have time for now. But the Torah says there's a negative prohibition to not leave the corner, and there's a negative prohibition to steal. And you could ask, why is there the same level? Stealing, I'm taking your money. But leaving the corner, it's my money. I just don't want to give it to you. The answer is, it's not really my money. It's Hashem's money. Once you understand that everybody's money is Hashem, and Hashem decides who gets what, it's the same level. If I come to your house and take it, or if I don't let you take it from my house, because Hashem decided it's yours. It's a completely different level of existence when you live with Hashem every second. And when we work for income, we have to think the same thing. However much we're supposed to get, we get. And if, you know, so it's just it always fascinates me. There would be no legal code like this that could be comparable, that would compare not paying your taxes to stealing from a bank. But in the Torah law, no, it's not your money, it's not your money. They're both high crimes. Okay. Yeah, we go on to more. You're not allowed to, lifnei iver, you're not allowed to put a stumbling block in front of a blind person. This refers to, first of all, physically, but also there's a Torah level prohibition not to cause somebody else to sin, right? Yeah. If somebody wants non-kosher food, I'm not allowed to give it to them if they're Jewish. Strict prohibition, I'm not allowed to give it to them. And obviously, another example is to give bad advice. Somebody comes to you and say, hey, where should I invest my money, or where should I give? And you say, I'll give it to me, or give it to my friend. But that might not be the best, Torah level prohibition. You have to give the best advice. You're not allowed to mislead.
Yeah, also, like, Rabbi, if let's say somebody that he was an alcoholist, okay, now he's away from the drink. Don't put a drink next to him, okay, because you're filling him.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. Very much so. Yeah. And the Torah says at the end of that pasuk in Pasuk Yudalad on page 660, 14, be scared. You have to be afraid of God. What does that mean? Mm-hmm. Sometimes you think no one's going to know. If I give this guy bad advice, or or I trip him up, or I set him up, or I give him something which he's not supposed to have, who's going to know? No, Hashem's going to know. And then it continues how to be just in court, not to be nice to either party, even the poor one. We're not extra kind to the poor. It's equal justice. Then it talks about lo selech rachel, to talk negatively, rechilus. Lashon hara, very good. Yeah, it comes up over and over again. And then lo sa'amod al dam re'echa, the end of 16. Do not stand by as somebody is somebody's life is in danger. We are not allowed to stand by. And again, Ani Hashem, I am Hashem. Legally, I don't think there could be a punishment for somebody that doesn't save someone. I've never heard of this. You could say I was scared, But not that there's a punishment for this, but the Torah says you have to help save someone. Don't hate your friend in your heart. And then it says rebuke your friend. If you see somebody doing something wrong, give them rebuke. And there's a whole detail how we do that. Not to take revenge, not to hold a grudge, and to love the fellow Jew. Love your fellow. And as Rabbi Kiva says, this is a big rule in the Torah. When they came to Hillel, they said, teach me the whole Torah 1 foot. Love your fellow like you love yourself.
It's interesting that ואהבת לרעך, we would say today, ואהבת את רעך.
ואהבת לרעך.
It's a preposition that it's also displaying as et, functioning as et.
Yeah. It's funny. Et was not used much. That's why the Gemara says, the Mishnah says, I think it comes from Rabbi Lezer. He went through every et in the Torah and he learned something from it. Why? Because he said they're all extra. Think of an example. Kabed et avicha ve'et imecha. It just says kabed avicha ve'imecha. What's et avicha ve'et imecha? So for example, he learns that you have to honor your older brother. So he says kabed et avicha includes your older brother. Whatever it's going. So that's how much he's sure that the word et is extra. Because they didn't use it. So et doesn't really mean it. It's like, I don't know. It's like, I don't know how to compare it in English. It's not really a comparison. We don't have it. Right. So that's why v'havta l'recha is the natural spelling in the Torah language. V'havta et recha would be extra, and he would have to learn something from the word et. So anyway.
You know, Rabbi, that Ben Gurion never used the word et, the preposition et.
Yeah.
Because it's really not mandatory.
It's extra, yeah.
It stands in a certain conditions, but you can ignore it.
Yeah. So as I said, yeah. Every time the word et appears, we don't. But there was one Hannah, like 2.5 years, who learned something from every single et in the Torah.
Interesting.
Anyway, okay. Let's just finish up here. We're just going through very quickly. And then, if you'll see at the top of page 662, we make a big shift. The shift is in the second word on the page. Et chukotai, yutes, 19, you have to observe my decrees. And the Rambam is big into this in his introduction to Pirkei Avos in his book called 8 Chapters. There's a difference between a logical commandment and a decree. A decree is, I'm not giving you a reason, just do it.
Like chukim u'mishpatim.
Yeah. So this is chukim now. So now we pivot and go straight into chukim. For example, you're not allowed to take 2 different animals, a donkey and a sheep, and mate them together to make a third animal. You're not allowed to do that. Why? I'm not telling you. You're just not allowed to. Now, the general assumption when it comes to all of these things, including wearing wool and linen together and planting 2 different plants next to each other, is that this is not logical, but the Torah is teaching us that there are certain things in the world that Hashem says, don't mess with this. I separated meat and milk. I separated wool and linen. I separated a cow and a sheep. And I separated, grapes and wheat. Don't plant these things next to each other. Don't connect these things. Why? I'm not telling you. We are not allowed to graft a tree. So I'm not allowed to take a lemon tree and graft it with an esrog tree. I'm not allowed to take an apple and a pear. If somebody else does it, I can eat it. The food's, it's not like it's not kosher. But a Jewish person is not allowed to graft 2 different fruits together. Why? I'm not telling you the reason. We don't know the reason. Hashem's saying this is a certain boundary that I created in creation, that there's a mitzvah for you. No, it's not a mitzvah. It's a prohibition. You're not allowed to mix it. And this is, I think, something very fundamental to anyone learning Torah, which is, you're right, the 90% of the Torah we understand, but there's 10% we don't understand. And I spoke about this on Shabbos, some people try to rationalize, why don't we eat meat and milk? It's not healthy. And if pork is raw, that's not, you can do that, it's cute. But ultimately, you have to do it because the creator of the world told me not to do it. So this is the chukim, the decrees.
Can we say the chukim, they have a reason, but maybe we are limited as human beings to understand the reason.
For sure.
Behind
100%. Not even a question. Yeah. 100%. The definite reason. Hashem wasn't.
Not just that Hashem wants.
Yeah.
Because
I'm saying
so.
We do it because Hashem wants.
Exactly.
We don't understand, but we know.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a reason. Yeah. In fact, King Solomon, Shlomo Melech, he says he understood the reason for every for every mitzvah, except for the red heifer, the paraduma, because the paraduma doesn't make sense. The person who sprinkles becomes impure, and the person who gets sprinkled on becomes pure, and it's like, what's going on? So he says that one I don't understand, but he writes in the pasuk, I think it's in Mishle even, I understand everything besides this. But the truth is, you can look in Sfarim like the Chinuch, you can look in the Rambam when he numbers all the mitzvahs, and they'll write in Mar Nevuchim, Guide for the Perplexed, they write reasons for every mitzvah, including this. Don't mix different elements, but they're not like made to be convincing, because they're not claiming to understand these chukim, which are not inherently logical. They're just to help you when you shake a lulav. If you think, oh, I'm shaking a branch, I don't want to do this. If you think I'm shaking away the bad spirit, and this represents fruit, and this represents trees, and this represents smells, and this I get it. So we try to enhance our observance by adding reasons, but we don't do it for the reason. The problem is, if you do it for the reason, then when you lose the reason, you lose the whole thing. So, for example, the next halakha, which is arla, you plant a tree for 3 years, you're not allowed to eat the fruits. Why? I don't know why. You're not allowed to. Well, it's not ripe, it's not healthy. That's not the reason. Again, it might be. And then other examples, not to cut off the pears. Men are not allowed to cut off the edge of the hair. They're not allowed to do the Kim Jong-un haircut. Why? I don't know, but you're not allowed to. Now, the Rambam will tell you, this is what idol worshippers used to do. They used to do this haircut. But again, you're not allowed to cut with a razor, cut the corners of the beard. You're not allowed to cut ourselves. We're not allowed to get tattoos. This is top of page 664. Keeping Shabbos, not allowed to do witchcraft. And then it finishes off with, again, the mishpatim, the logical things. Standing up in front of an elder, respecting elders, and again, one should fear God. Okay, so we got through the bulk of it. I have to leave it here. But we go at the end of Parsha Kedoshim once again into the forbidden relationships. And that takes us really to the end of the Parsha. And it speaks a little bit about people that do witchcraft. And that is it, Achrei Kedoshim. Very fundamental Parsha, lots and lots of points to talk about, but I thought maybe we'll just give a quick overview summary, and that way hopefully be helpful. Thank you.
Very interesting.
Thank you. Thank you for joining on the Zoom, guys.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.